Hello, welcome. So excited to dive in with you today and share some stories, personal stories, and universal insights and messages related to the Soul Art Star Collage. So I am Laüra Hollick. I'm going to be doing an artist talk today. And this might be something new in the sense of normally when I'm connecting with you and connecting with people, I'm guiding journeys. I'm leading journeys, or I'm sharing a creative process. I'm sharing something that you can use to navigate your life. And I was thinking about this in terms of this artist talk today and why I was inspired to do it. And I realized that as artists, we all have our own realms that we go to in our creative process. It's like a zone, or it's a realm. And we go there, we get insights, we get messages, we feel nourished, we feel like ourselves. And I wanted to speak a little bit about an art piece that really taught me about that. So we're going to be going into that. In this artist talk, I'm going to be speaking about really discovering and developing your own artist language. I'm going to be talking about body mapping and how it's really important to incorporate our body in our art, especially doing soul art. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that. And I'm going to share personal stories, universal insights and messages for these transformational times. And then also going into collage as a medium and looking at like copyright issues, and then also cultural appropriation. What is that? And how to honor cultures, different cultures, without exploiting them and appropriating them. So we're going to go into all that. So the art piece that we're going to focus on today is the Soul Art Star Collage. So I'd like to just share that with you so you can see what we're going to be talking about today. So this piece it's a giant collage. So it's huge, like if it was hanging up on the wall. In fact, I was thinking for the background here, I was like, should I put it behind me? But if I did, you would just see the center of the collage and just see kind of like the arms of the stars going out, and you wouldn't see the top, you wouldn't see the legs. So I decided to go with this behind. So we're going to talk about this particular collage and kind of how did it come to be, what's the origin story, and just kind of what unfolds. Now, my intention for this today is to share, right? Because a lot flows through when you're making art, right? If you're an artist, you know that. So I feel like I want to share what's coming through. I also want to, create that fertile soil for the spark, right? Where you get your next, and you get your next clue, right? So throughout this process, I'm going to be asking, what comes up for you, what you think about the piece. I'll be showing more of the collage up close, things like that. And so, if you want to share in the comments just anything that comes up as I'm speaking, or if you have questions, things like that, then I can try to check in on that as we're going along. So I just want to welcome Iris. It's so beautiful. Thank you. Linda, is it on canvas or paper? It's on paper, giant photography backdrop paper. That's what I use so I can get that size. And Radna says magical. Hello. Oh, Radna, I was just looking at your art piece the other day, the one with it was greens and purples and you had like yellow circles. Do you remember that soul art piece you did? I love that. So, all right, so here we are. So I'm going to give the origin story to give context, because I have so much I want to share, and it's just kind of like, where do I dive in? I'm going to be kind of tuning in as well, just kind of how the flow of how this wants to come through. But I'm going to start right now with the origin. So this piece, the body mapping, we'll watch the process of the piece. And you can see kind of how it came to be. And then the story, kind of all the layers of it goes back even further. So there you can see I was body mapping. The edges of the stars are from my legs. They're traced from my legs. And then starting to collage, going wild, and then here we go. And now you can't necessarily tell from this video because it's a time lapse, but I worked on this for over a year. But the roots of it goes back over 20 years. All right, so there it is. That gives you a sense of the size of it as well. My whole studio floor is filled with it. And I use rocks to kind of hold things down when I'm gluing them. I just use like a white glue. And there's images, collage images from calendars and books, magazines, and photos of myself, cards. So there it is. That's the Star Collage. So I want to talk about the origin of my background, actually, and how this piece came to be, because it feels relevant also for some of the messages that came through. And you might be feeling this too, because one of the things is like, I feel like we're in the end of a cycle, right? So like on the planet, in terms of like ways that we've been doing things, completing those and making space for new things, but we have to complete stuff for something new to happen. So going back like over 20 years ago, 1999 for me, I had graduated from university, and while I was in university, and actually even in high school, I was in the Dundas Valley School of Art, and then I went to McMaster University for Fine Arts, and it was very heavy technique. Like, I mean, you know, it's like you have these 4-hour studio classes where you're doing anatomy. You know, we were in the anatomy labs in the hospital and actually like working with cadavers, working with body parts. It was very technique based and learning how to draw, how to paint, you know, all that stuff. And I spent years devoted to that. And then in one of the years, I think it was like the 3rd or 4th year in university, somebody brought in a piece to be critiqued by the professors. And I happened to see this piece. And I looked at it, I'm like, what's that? And the woman, she's like, oh, I did this collage. And I looked at it and there was like Scooby-Doo was in this collage. And I thought, oh my gosh, like I want to do that. Like that's amazing. Like all these pictures, and you don't have to spend all the time of like, you know, 4 hours, you know, drawing the perfect hand, or, you know, does it have the perfect technique? It's like you see a picture, cut, 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 and you can start to get this kind of language going with pictures without having to take all the time of all the technique involved if you were going to paint or draw it. Now, I have total respect for technique and what it takes. It's a real accomplishment to achieve the ability to do that. And I respect it and I've learned it, but it sort of agitates me because my own creative mind is much, it goes faster in a way where it's like I'm already getting insights and I kind of want to move on to the next piece of the story rather than kind of, I don't get pleasure out of the technique of the drawing. I get pleasure out of the insights that the images are starting to communicate to me. So you can just think of that for yourself in your own art practice. You know, what gives you pleasure? What gets you into the zone, right? And for me, I often would feel like I was kind of getting out of the zone when I was so focused on drawing or painting. But collage and working with images really liberated me. So when I came out of university, so 1990, I graduated in 98, and then in 1999, I opened Soul Art Studio. And I had this studio, and you know, it was up near this waterfall. It was this beautiful spot in this old stone gallery, and I was on the top floor. And I just got like bins and bins of National Geographic, Vogue, you know, Harper's Bazaar, Elle magazine, you know, whatever magazine. I had just bins of them. And I just went to town. Like I just started, like I didn't have any paints there. I wasn't doing, it was just like, it was totally collage. And I just went into a zone that time for me was like this massive spiritual awakening, because images were like portals. Every picture I could kind of enter into it and it would tell me a story. And I would feel like I was understanding myself. And I was kind of putting myself into these worlds. And actually at a certain point, I actually took photos of myself and would put them in these pictures, these that I was creating. And I felt like I was finding my home. Now, there was another piece that was running parallel at that time of kind of this spiritual awakening through imagery. But I was also having a huge kind of crisis, challenge in my life, and it was like a health issue. I was really struggling with my skin. I had acne, and it was just like, I felt like, wow, like I'm in this cocoon of this acne, and it was just, I couldn't really live in this world. And so going into art, in a way, was a bit of a retreat, because I couldn't really go out in the world, but I could go in. And so I would go in and I would spend a lot of time just like going in and like kind of finding my beauty. Where is it? But the way that I would go in was I started body mapping. Now, this isn't something that no one taught me this. It was just like, I'm sure it exists out there. Of course, people trace their bodies. But how it happened for me, so in 1999, I was in my studio. And I was just sitting on the floor, kind of stretching out my legs, and just kind of like getting ready to get into my art process. I wasn't quite ready to do anything yet, but I was sort of just stretching and sort of, dawdling. And then I happened to notice that my legs made a really nice shape. And so I traced them. I just traced my legs, and then I stood back and I looked at it and I was like, I'm going to make something with that. I'm going to use that as a shape. And this was the beginning of body mapping. So I want to show you a series of collages that I did way back. This is going back 1999. I'm going to show you some of the collages that I made at that time. Now, all of these collages are made with, there's some bones and feathers, like actual real things, but then there's magazines and pictures of all kinds of things. Money is in that one. But all of them include body mapping. That one has a photo of myself. The redbird, that was the original one where I traced my legs, which became the wings. So all of them had this body mapping element, and all of them were working with collage where I could go into the portal of the pictures and kind of turn pictures into other pictures. And, there'd be some National Geographic of some earth-based culture, which I was just completely kind of obsessed with, kind of African culture and South American culture and all the earth-based cultures. That felt like home to me. So whenever I saw an image that expressed that, that went in the pile of, okay, save that pile. We're going to use that eventually for something. But as I started using those images and I was kind of putting myself into it, kind of going into the portal of, what would it be like to live in an earth-based society? What would it be like to feel magical? What would it be like? It was kind of like just opening up the possibilities. And because there was just so many images, this is at the time when magazines were kind of at the height, right? There's just so many images, so many portals, but I could use them as a door to my own expression. And so I wanted to just share this piece because I think it kind of ties into cultural appropriation as well as when we're developing our own language as an artist, right? Because it's like, of course, we're always going to be inspired by whatever's happening. You walk down the street, you see someone in some outfit, you're like, oh, cool, I like that color combination. And then you might do something with it. Right? So you're kind of, you're being inspired by something, or, you're kind of taking the inspiration, taking that vision, and kind of then where it goes to your own artist language is, what do you do with it? How do you work with it? How do you take it to a level that is your voice, your expression, that has your intention that's woven in? It's not just like a copy of something. If there was, say just with collage, if you took an image and then you put it up and you said that it was yours because you just took the image, it isn't really yours because you haven't added and you haven't evolved or transformed it to make it your own, right? So that kind of, I'll go into the piece about copywriting. So when you're using images that come from someone else, like that's their art or their photography or their image, right? Collage is utilizing those things. And then in our system, we have this thing called copyright, which is a great thing. So it's a way of ensuring that if someone is working with collage, you can't just like take something from someone else and then say it's yours. But if you take something like a picture from a magazine and then you cut it up and you change what it is, now you've added your own artistic voice. You have your own language in it. So then the copyright, now you've created something that is yours, right? And so this is a similar idea with cultural appropriation. Cultural appropriation is the idea of taking something from someone else's culture or someone else's, whether it's copyright in a way, right? Like it's like something else that isn't yours, taking something that isn't yours, and then sort of without understanding its meaning or without having kind of respect for what it is and what you have to do to earn the right to use that, kind of adopting it without, it's just like kind of taking something, sort of like a stealing, right? So like when somebody takes a practice from another culture and then doesn't kind of respect what it takes to earn that practice, you're appropriating it, right? So if you have questions about that, let me know, because I think it's an important conversation, especially around collage, but just in our time today, where we are balancing the scales with minorities, meaning people who haven't always had a voice. We're balancing it out. So it's like they have a voice, like we all have, whether it's women, people of color, everybody, or different LGBTQ, everybody is valuable. And so in the past, there was sort of one dominant voice, kind of mass kind of voice going out. But we're balancing the scales where we're like, wait a second, everybody's got value. Everyone's got to have their perspective considered. So we're hearing a lot more about this idea of cultural appropriation because of that, thank goodness. And so it's in the conversation today. So now I was doing collage and working with images of other cultures going back over 20 years ago, and it wasn't in the conversation then. But thank goodness, my own instinct, my own artistic voice, I always wanted to create my own expression. And it was always like being so inspired and letting that kind of turn something into like, who am I? Who do I want to be? Kind of like, evolving my expression by being exposed to other people's experiences, just like we do when we go to a gallery or we go, into stores and we're looking at things. We're always going to be inspired. It's just when you add your own artistic voice, you have your own intention, you have your own meaning, that's when you get ownership of your own artistic voice. Okay, so I just want to bring that in. So that's kind of like this origin story with collage. Also, the technique of body mapping. So that's something now in my Soul Art certification. Level 1 is body mapping, because the body becomes a way to enter that inner world, a way to go in. So why would it be important that we incorporate the body in our art, especially when it's soul art, right? And soul art being connection to your spirit and getting spiritual messages for your life, right? When we incorporate the body, it's like we're grounding, we're bringing reality to the dream. We're giving roots and a sense of tangible realness to imagination. And at the time when this started for me and I was wanting to heal my skin, and I was traveling into my inner world, into my inner self, my inner soul. The body, we don't do that to escape life. You could. Some art forms you could, for sure. It's like an escape. It could be. But what I'm interested in is transformation, the evolution of your spirit. And for that to happen, we have to work with earth and spirit, meaning there's a reality as well as something that's more of a dream, the imagination and real, dream and reality, vision, like essence to form, right? So when we work with the body, we're giving that tangible sense like, wow, this is me, this is inside of me. So when I'm making these collages, it's like, these are worlds inside of me. But an ironic thing happened where as I did them, and they were definitely my own personal story and my own kind of like quest really to find beauty to find wholeness, to find healing, to find kind of earth connection, spirit connection. As I was doing that, the images started to become more almost universal in a way, because it's like going that deep into the source. It sort of speaks to all of us, because in a way, aren't we all trying to do that? Aren't we all kind of going into like what is true, what is pure, and trying to embody that within ourselves? Now, of course, we have our own uniqueness, but there's that universal quest to be who you are and to express yourself and to, find the map in as well as the way to express it out. So I'm just going to check in. So Sharma Ray says, "This is beyond incredible, Laura." Thank you. Evolutionary. "I feel inspired, wanting to explore the body mapping in relationship to the pain I am experiencing in my pelvis. Absolutely. Absolutely. And that is like how the work keeps evolving, because, if we can talk to our body, and we can talk to our body not necessarily in a language that someone else like kind of, sort of charts and graphs and studies. And if that's how someone thinks, awesome. But most of us, people, like we're spirits in our bodies. We have to speak our spirit language to get answers to the deeper questions, to find what is true for us. And so when we do things like body mapping and soul art, those are ways that we are accessing deeper information. And on the note of, with my skin and the acne, because that was really my big question motivating me to do the work initially. Like I wanted to figure that out. I wanted to solve that. I wanted to heal that. I wanted to be liberated from the cage of that kind of emotional pain. Like acne doesn't hurt necessarily, or sometimes it can, but it's an emotional pain because you have a wall between you and the world, and it just feels ugly and it's hard to connect with people. So whatever form of pain, it's like to get to the root, the origin, what is the source of pain? Because we don't have pain for no reason, right? Like the body's trying to say something, but what is it trying to say? And everyone will have a different opinion. But what I found with doing body mapping, soul art, is that I wanted to know my soul's opinion. What is my soul's opinion? And so I was able to heal the acne on my face. And what I learned in that, what was really happening, is that my spirit, and what I learned through doing the pieces, and this is going to bring me to now the Star Collage, but what I learned in the pieces was that my soul kind of didn't know how to land on the planet. And so I kind of created a wall of protection. I didn't really know how to be here. When I could just connect with my spirit, I felt like I was home. But why it's so important to have the body connection is like, but I had to, how could I be home in my body? How could my spirit be in this body? And I had to navigate all the fears of connection and all the belief systems that I had kind of built up like a moat around me that were like believing just everything was terrifying. And I, through the process of all those collages, I started to kind of detangle those things because I understood really what the real problem was. It was like I had belief systems that I was really scared and I didn't know how to be on the planet, right? So whatever's going on, whether it's in the pelvis or things in our body, it's a great way to get information from the soul. Linda says, "I have a collection of images I haven't done anything with yet." Oh my goodness. Well, you might be in for some fun. So I'm going to jump it to the Star Collage. So I'm going to show sort of some close-ups, and I've been talking about collage and I've been talking about things. So this collage actually took me a year to do, and the images from it and all the bits and pieces were from over 20 years because I'd been collecting them since 1999, right? So there's images in this. So it's like, when I was working on this, and I think the reason why it took so long, first of all, it's huge, but it was like, in a way, it was a bit like a eulogy. It was a bit like kind of a legacy, like reading a journey of learning and understanding and becoming, and my own voice, discovering that, and also kind of what's going on the planet right now. There's this we're at a transformational point where all the things that we've been collecting, all the knowledge, the experiences, all the things for all these years, thousands of years really, but just in the recent time, all these pieces, it's like, what have we learned? What are we doing with the things that we've learned? Are we really evolving? And what does that even look like? So in the piece, you'll see there's pictures of me that I've done over the years, and there's like a whale bone that goes through part of that, and kind of like fossils and of the past, but also where are we going? So when I think about this piece and, collecting these images, as an artist, it's so important to notice what you notice, right? What do you notice? And if you want to type in, when you're looking at the collage, what did you notice? Because that gives a clue about your artistic language, who you are. So over the 20 years, the things that I noticed, I had huge piles of stuff of what I noticed. And it really starts to give a flavor of what matters to me. What am I interested in? What's my story, right? So the things that you notice, they're kind of like a little breadcrumb, or like, dotted stars making a constellation, revealing a map for who you are. So yeah, if you want to share anything of what did you notice in that? Like, what stood out? Was it all the little pieces, or was it one image in particular, or did it open up a portal? Did ideas start flowing of like, oh my gosh, and now I want to make something? What came up for you? If I want to make something, that's a clue. Or it's just like, oh wow, I love listening to an artist talk. I love hearing about the creative process. What stands out for you is a clue about your own artistic voice. And as we're at this kind of transformational, transitional point in our human evolution, I feel like we're coming to a completion of a cycle. Like after I completed that collage, I have no more magazines in my place. I felt like the 20-year journey of kind of that process, it came to resolution in that piece. And I think that's why I was ready to do an artist talk about it, because it is almost like the realization of an entire body of work that started way, way back. And some of the things I learned from that are really, how do I enter that zone? And it's the process. It's like gathering the clues. Each image is like gathering the clues. I loved collecting the images as much as putting it all together and seeing it done. But seeing it done is just one sliver, but it's like this whole journey. It's the journey that just lights me up, which is why I love guiding journeys, right? Most of the times I'm doing these talks and I'm guiding a process for you because I love that. That's my zone. Right? That's my zone when I can get into that. And I was thinking of different artists and different zones that there is really, it's the zone is your medium. Rather than thinking about painting or even collage, or the zone that you can go to where you connect with your creative spirit and you hear your voice, your true voice. It's that zone that is the artist in you. How you get there, you're going to play with that throughout your life. And I was thinking of the artist Marina Abramovich. And if you know her name, you might be familiar with the piece that she did at the MoMA in New York, where it was called The Artist is Present. And she just sat, and people would come and sit with her, and she'd kind of have eye contact with them, and I don't know if it was timed or how that worked, but the artist is present, and you just sit with the artist. Her zone, her artist is that space between you and another, is that zone. And we think about art, we usually think of like an object, but every artist is different. What gets you into your artist self? It might be invisible even, which is, hard to communicate to people or hard to sell or hard to talk about because it might be invisible. But Marina, I think she is a genius because she found a way that people could understand that zone. She also did things where she'd have like two naked people and you'd have to walk through it. You know, again, it's that space in between, the invisible space, but she sets up environments that allows you to experience the invisible. And so I just wanted to weave that in because that's a really interesting way to think about art. You know, like what is your art? What is art? It's not just an object. And going back to all the stuff I've learned from the earth-based cultures, and that I love, you know, art for earth-based cultures is kind of functional. They do ceremonies to connect with spirit. They do ceremonies to bring in a harvest. They do different kind of rituals. They'd have a mask that would allow them to commune with a certain kind of spirit. So is the art the mask, or is it that point of their connecting with the spirit, right? Like to me, the art was actually the point of connecting with spirit, and they would use tools like a mask or a costume or whatever it might be. So this kind of goes into a bigger conversation of like, well, what is art, right? And what is the art of the future? And actually in Soul Art School right now, we have our ritual that we focus each month, and the ritual theme of this month is future art, right? Because it's going to be going beyond the idea of a painting or an object. It's a zone. So my own zone would be that place where I can commune with spirit. And collage has served me so well because the images act as portals that allow me to make that direct connection to get the messages. So I want to hear some of the things that are coming through for you. So Lori says, yes, I love lines. And, well, I love legacy, lineage, the symbol connected to the topic. Amazing. So the things that come up, you know, take notice. This is part of a clue about your own artist language. You know, what's interesting to you? What has meaning for you? These things matter. They really matter because they start to carve a path. When you follow those trails, a path starts being carved, and it's your path. It's your path because you're letting your own intuition and inspiration kind of give you clues and you're following it. Phoebe says, the things I noticed most and first were the unicorns and Pegasus and then the star-shaped faces. Very cool. So there's like a magical element there that you're noticing. Katie, hey, Katie was in some of my first collage workshops back at the Old Stone Gallery. That's like 20 years ago. So great to see you, Katie. Katie says, the spinal cord bones threading through and connecting. Love it. Oh, yeah. I love that too. And actually, I'll just share because you might enjoy this, Katie. So the spinal cord, those bones, those are images from the artist Brian Youngin. And Brian, he's a native artist. And what he does is he uses modern day cultural things like, you know, Nike shoes, or in the case of that, lawn furniture. So all those bones, those whale bones, were made out of plastic lawn furniture from Walmart, which I learned about Brian Youngin years ago, and I just like so intrigued. He had a show at the Toronto Art Gallery a couple years ago, but just you might enjoy that, Katie, since you noticed that. All right, Suzanne. Hey, Suzanne. Zing. I love that there were details for the magic as we zoomed in and the whole was a magic portal. Yeah, very cool. And, you know, like, I have to say, like, that's actually something that I love too. And whenever I'm making a piece, and if you remember the collages I shared in the beginning, like going back to the past, something that I love to do in my art is I like there to be like one clear image. Like it's like if you just walked by, you're like, oh, it's a star, or oh, it's a bird, or, you know, like it's clear and you can kind of land and rest. But then if you take a second look, you're like, whoa, there is a world within a world within a world. And there's just more and more details as you go. But you can kind of rest in that there's also clarity. Like there's one image, but then layers of images. So I love that. Irene says, I love the naked bodies with the sun heads. Oh, cool. Divinity, the feminine, so gorgeous. Yeah, the sun head. Oh, I know what you're talking about. Yes. Thank you. Cool. Shelley says, I'm exploring symbols that resonate with my soul from every culture. Beautiful. So, kind of tying that back in with this idea of like cultural appropriation, when we're inspired by other cultures, as of course we all are, and if anyone's traveled, you're kind of, even the foods from different cultures, of course we're always kind of taking in from what's around us, right? Cultural appropriation is when if we kind of take what has meaning for someone else and we attribute that meaning to ourselves without having lived through what that culture required you to live through to have that meaning. So a way of thinking of it, again, as an artist, it's just always like learning from other things, respecting what we're learning from, but really getting so crystal clear and strong and powerful in your voice, your perspective, knowing your own intent, knowing what's behind your motivations, knowing what's guiding you, right? Having a connection to your own spirit. And then everything starts to have your own flavor to it, even when you're inspired. And sometimes someone else will have done the work on something and we get to kind of leapfrog on that. It's like, wow, someone learned this symbol means that. And we get to learn that and kind of like, all right, we didn't have to do their 20 years of figuring that out. We get to, learn that, but then where do we take it? Like, how do we acknowledge that we learned that? But also where do we grow with it? What do we do with it? How does it have meaning for us personally? Sharma Ray says, I can see myself using fabric to create a collage. Ooh, I love that. Because I love fabric, and the fabric can be used as a metaphor for the fabric of my body. Beautiful. The zebra stood out to me as I have a close relationship with this animal. Seeing it on your collage says you and I are connected, Laura. Oh, and I got zebra-like, kind of a galactic constellation going on behind as well. Beautiful. All right, so that particular collage started, the Star Collage, that one, I started it in 2020 in Soul Art School in our collage workshop. So I just wanted to share that with you. That collage workshop that was created, that started the thing, that is still in Soul Art School in our workshops library, right? There's all kinds of workshops in Soul Art School and rituals and journals and all kinds of stuff. So the collage workshop is there. If you're wanting to like really dive into collage, you can check that out at Soul Art School. The collage workshop is there. And of course, my collage became quite ambitious because I spent over a year working on it. But, the workshop itself, you could complete a collage in 3 hours if you wanted, or you can get really ambitious and, work on one for a year or work with fabrics and so on. So thank you so much for joining me in this. This is really very meaningful to share this artist talk with you and kind of bring this work, the collage work that I've been doing and with the body mapping, be able to speak about it and give a little of my own background in it, as well as how it relates to kind of the world now. And I hope that there is something that's sparked for you for your own creative path. So thank you so much for joining me today. And if you want to continue the journey, there's always Soul Art School. You can check that out. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm sending you lots of love. Bye for now.